Video 7, the Bible. Let's do this. Quote, responding to atheist statements about the Bible. The Bible is full of contradictions. Saying the Bible is full of contradictions does not mean it is so. Can you provide a contradiction that we can examine in context? There are many websites that address alleged contradictions. Here's one, www.carm.org. End quote. I guess that dot at the end of org was a period, not another dot. Whatever! Wow, way to promote your own webpage, Slick. Of course, there's also web pages that point out the contradictions, or I guess the alleged contradictions, right? Oh, man. Just look at the number of contradictions just for Judas alone. Just for that one person that may or may not have existed. Just for that guy. Okay, so basically, the poster of this wants you to post the contradiction. Then they just are going to wave it away by saying that it was taken care of by Slick. I mean, they're not even going to post the response. How about, there's not even like a link to, here's a link to the page of contradictions so that when they say one, you can look it up with easy reference and advanced search function or something. No, it's just, yeah, tell them to come to this website. They'll find it, I guess. It's just so lazy. Okay, so why isn't it that the apologist, the theist, or anyone that I've come across can admit to the contradictions? Well, we know, or we should know, that contradictions mean that it can't be true. Something can't be and not be at the same time. You can't have a car and also not have a car. It's one or the other, not both. So when you point out, hey, you know, Judas there, who did he give that land to? Did he sell it? Did he buy it? Did he die there? Did he not die there? How did he die? Whatever. They go, oh, well, see, there's a way to explain it. And then, of course, you have that whole in context thing, which is just a fancy way of saying, get out of jail free. Even Ray Comfort, freaking Ray Comfort of all people, admitted to at least one Bible contradiction, although I'm sure later on, if it's ever pointed out to him again, he'll be quicker on the uptake next time. And he also lost $100, which was hilarious. But nonetheless, even he admits when he's wrong, when he's shown that he's wrong, at least in that one particular context, although other places he hasn't. Slick tells his people, nah, there are none. And even if there are, this website will deal with them. And I'm not even going to give you the direct link to it. Just let them figure it out for themselves. Okay, and that's it. This literally is all the atheists ever say about the Bible, right? That's it. We only just say that it's full of contradictions. Well, it is, but who cares? Because it's already been taken care of. What about slavery? No, Slick doesn't cover that issue. What about the other laws? Stoning people to death, is that really necessary? If we did that in our legal system today, okay, if we said every single crime that is committed could be sentenced by stoning to death, even if we never carried it out, still, wouldn't that just say something about our society? Something perhaps that's wrong about our society? Now, I inserted the even if we didn't carry it out because Jewish apologists, and there are some, not many because they don't evangelize, they aren't compelled to evangelize by the Torah. It doesn't say to do that. Only the New Testament does that. But nonetheless, they'll say things like, well, the stoning to death never really happened. The rabbis never carried it out. It was just an option. Like, you had chances. You could sacrifice various animals instead, and you can get off of it. So it was rarely, if ever, carried out. If it was ever carried out, period, one. Secondly, the fact that it is a sentence at all, both of those are bad. Now, the truth about Deuteronomy is more than likely, now I don't know that it's absolutely true, it's something I can't nail down and pin down for sure, but the most likely explanation is that the entire thing was made up by the priests at the time who wanted to eliminate other gods from the competition and just wanted a way to also control the people. And the more laws they had, the better able they were to do that. But it's just a hypothesis, hasn't even graduated to theory, and that's the closest I can think that I can come to the truth of the matter. And to be honest, we'll really never know for sure, because these things have just been passed on, and we don't have very good records of any of this. We don't know who wrote it. We have old copies, but that doesn't really help us. But at any rate, all of this isn't dealt with by Slick or his people in this single paragraph. And then we also have the problem that there's archaeological evidence against many things in the Bible. For example, there's no worldwide flood. There is the fact that camels have been shown to have not been domesticated, meaning that every time that the Bible mentions that they rode on camels, that's a lie, because there weren't camels at that time, not in the Old Testament time. And New Testament time, they were getting close to ish, maybe, but mules, possibly, camels, no. So that's wrong. And of course, we again have other examples of things that aren't testified. The entire life of Jesus is only an appearance in the Gospels. Nowhere else. Nowhere. No one mentions this person until years later. And then the historians that do are actually forgeries. And then when they finally do, and it's not a forgery, it's just to talk about the Christians and what they believe. It's not to talk about any of this stuff because they weren't there. And the Christians will say, oh, but they could have interviewed somebody that was alive at that time. Oh, an eyewitness testimony. Yeah, like, that's credible. And what's funny is they'll also go back to the Bible and they'll say, well, but there was 500 witnesses. Really? Who were they? Where did they live? What were their names? Not that it matters, because that too is in the Bible. And I don't know why that number was picked. Just arbitrary number. But the fact of the matter is, there's no support, archaeologically speaking, for anything other than a handful of kings and a few locations. Now, Nazareth is problematical because it's questionable whether or not Nazareth was as big as the Bible makes it out to be. Bethlehem was there, but then there's, and as far as the census, didn't happen, no records of it. They didn't do censuses like that. When they did do censuses, they didn't make people travel. So we have all this evidence against it, plus the fact that Jesus' crucifixion could not have happened in the way that it's described in the Bible. Neither Roman laws nor Jewish laws would have allowed for Jesus to die in that way, and the Romans would not have given 1 cent iota of care to a number of Jewish people that said, this guy's claiming to be God. Why would they care? And they didn't really have this whole releasing of prisoner thing. That wasn't there either. That's just another insert thing. Although I could be wrong about that. If I'm wrong about that, feel free to tell me I'm wrong about that. But my point is, none of that, none of those problems are addressed by Slick. Lazy Slick. Alright, so what can we make of the contradiction thing? Is it really a key issue? Yes and no. It's possible to make a story that has no contradictions in it, and I suppose if somebody really worked at it, somebody could make a Bible like that. It still wouldn't make it true, it just would make it less problematical. What's weird is that no one admits to these contradictions. Well, it's just you have to read it in context. Well, it doesn't really... Dude, just admit that it's a problem and it's there and say, you know what? We screwed up. We screwed this up. This isn't perfect. We got it wrong because it was written by humans. Maybe you want to say it's inspired by God, but I don't know how you would prove that or how you would know that. But nonetheless, why not just say, yes, they're there? Is that so hard? Whatever. Alright, so what about the good parts of the Bible? Because whenever you start slamming the Bible, somebody's bound to come along and say, well, but there's good things in there too. Yeah, that's true of any holy text from any religion, just about. You could mine, that is to go in and find, something that was good in just about anything, anywhere. In any book long enough, you're going to find something that you could say was positive. Even in the darkest, most horrible book, you could probably find at least one sentence that was positive or that you could spin into being positive. So it doesn't really matter. Plus, most, if not all, of the ideas that are positive that are in the Bible have been around before that time. So it's nothing new under the sun, to quote from the Bible, ironically. The Golden Rule has been in most, if not all, religions from as far back as we can trace it, I think. I don't know if there's an exact origin date for that. What's interesting about the Golden Rule is that although religions have been teaching it and endorsing it and perhaps even enforcing it, people don't seem to do it very much. Well, I guess that makes sense, at least for the Christian Bible, because it says, yeah, treat your neighbor as yourself, but then it also says, kill your enemy. So I'm not sure how you can reconcile those two, but okay. Why not some instructions for how to be diplomatic? I mean, that could be a thing, but it's not in there. It's not in the Bible. There's a lot that's not in the Bible when you actually think about it. There isn't any mention of anything that we have to deal with today. Not really. And why should there be? If there was, maybe that would be a hint that it was divinely inspired. But it's not. It's everything is based on the time and the people and what they believed in that time. And in about 70, 60 AD, maybe 50 AD, a little bit before that for the Old Testament Torah. But nonetheless, around that area of time period between, sometime before 0 to about 70 or 80 or 90 AD or maybe a little bit after, they had very different ideas of how things worked back then, different beliefs that we don't have anymore. Many of them did believe that the world was flat. Many of them did believe that the Earth was at the solar system, at the center of the solar system, and there was other beliefs too that were widely held, and especially when you look at the pagan religions of that same time period, animal sacrifice was common, as also was human sacrifice in certain pagan things. It wasn't as common, so don't get me wrong. So the Old Testament, the Torah, evolved from one guy, probably, saying, you know what, I don't like their versions, I'm going to make my own. Now, maybe he didn't do that consciously, maybe he did it subconsciously, maybe he had a dream, I don't know. But nonetheless, that's all it takes is one guy or gal to start a religion. We've seen it with Mormonism, we've seen it with Scientology, we've seen it with cults. Take, for example, the Heaven's Gate cult. Now, what some more sophisticated apologists will say regarding the Bible and the closeness of its time. Well, 70 AD, that's still close enough to the time that these events happened that somebody could actually check them out. Yeah, but so was the Book of Mormon. It was right there. Well, it had gotten teleported away. But still, it was something that people could check out, right? They could see if this made any sense. But nobody did. And what about Scientology? When people get into that, they just believe it's true. They just go because they want something to believe in. And the same thing with the Heaven's Gate cult and things like this. You wonder how people can get into this stuff. Because people want to be part of something. People want something to believe in. And they can believe so strongly that they'll kill themselves or others because of that belief. How could anyone be stupid enough to think that heaven is behind a comet that's briefly going to go past the Earth and not even close enough you can barely see it in a telescope. How could anyone believe that nonsense? But people did, and they killed themselves for that belief. Which also nullifies the entire idea that the disciples martyred themselves and nobody dies for a lie idea. But my complaint is the disciples and Jesus are not something that you can show to be historical except for the Gospels. Period. Now, John the Baptist, an actual person, but they might have borrowed that actual person to use in their made-up book. And unless you can prove otherwise, I think that that's a reasonable position to have. Because your holy book is no better than any other holy book that exists. And worse than some. What about the good parts? Yeah, there's some good parts, sure. But you know what? Why go to the time and effort to find the good parts when you can just grab a book on ethics and morality and establish for yourself good ethics and morals? And really, what are the best ethics and morals? That's a good question to have, not one addressed by the Bible. Why doesn't the Bible teach how to be diplomatic? It says kill your enemy, but then it also says love your neighbor as yourself. Which one? How can I do both? I love you. Bang, 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 bang. Sorry. I guess I have to kill myself now because I shot you to death. But you were my enemy, so that made it okay now. Come on! There isn't too much else to say. Oh, well, there's a lot to say about the Bible, but there isn't too much to say about what Matt Slick said here. It's just one single paragraph, as if the only complaint that atheists have about the Bible is that it is full of contradictions. No, I'm also complaining that, archaeologically speaking, there's no evidence to support anything other than a handful of kings and a few cities, and I'd like you to produce more. And the fact that many times fake things have been produced by the Christian movement to try to make it seem more real. And they won't let outsiders examine those things. Yeah, that's nice. What about all of those issues? What about the issue that the Romans and the Jews didn't have a law that would have allowed them to kill Jesus in the first place? What about that? What about the fact that Pilate was nowhere near that place? What about that? What about, I mean, I could go on, but none of that is addressed. So the sheeple will be ill-equipped to handle the skeptic that knows this stuff. And what's funny is that often the skeptics know more about the Bible than the Christian themselves. And I've tried to make that into an argument, saying that if you really believe that this is the most important book in the world, you're sure not acting like it. And they'll make all sorts of excuses on why that doesn't matter. I don't need to know the whole Bible because I have faith. Brr, 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 brr. I know the essentials. Come on, man. That's it. That's all I've got. I mean, it's one paragraph. There's nothing else to address. I could go on and on about the problems of the Bible, but, whatever. Next time, evolution. Oh, good. Let's just see how Matt Slick screws up evolution. I'm not looking forward to it.